Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
Imagine waking up to find photos of yourself online that you didn't pose for. AI-generated images in sexualized poses or wearing close to nothing in situations that didn't exist in reality, but that are being shared through social media all over the world. Now imagine that you're not a 25 or 45-year-old woman or man. Imagine that you're a 12 or 13-year-old child. Images that have been created by users who just instruct Grok, an AI platform owned by Elon Musk's X AI company, to alter your clothing, sometimes to transparent bathing attire. It's not hard to imagine because that's what's been happening. Non-consensual, sexualized images of unsuspecting people, including children, being created by Grok users and shared on X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. Over the past few weeks, there's been a crackdown on these deepfake sexualized images from being created and shared. Only verified, that is, paying X users are now able to access some of those image-generating features. And some governments have actually outright banned the use of Grok. But Canada isn't one of those countries. And the states are actually doubling down on Grok's proliferation, with a commitment to integrate the AI tool into classified and unclassified networks at the Pentagon. I'm Cristina Howorun, and today on The Big Story, we're talking to Paris Marx, a technology author and host of the podcast Tech Won't Save Us, and an expert, really, on Elon Musk. Thanks for joining us, Paris.
Sure.
All right, so Paris, let's start at the very beginning. Can you talk to me a little bit about the history of Grok? Like, how did it come to be? Why is it out there?
Absolutely. It's a great question, right? So Elon Musk buys Twitter, or X, around 2022 is when he, really kind of kicks off this process, tries to take hold of this social media platform for about $44 billion. And of course, end of 2022 is when this latest kind of wave of AI hype kicks off, right? ChatGPT, the chatbot that everyone is familiar with now, is released at the end of November of 2022. And then leading into early 2023, you have all of these tech companies then, trying to do their own chatbots, trying to get in on the AI hype wave, basically, to make sure that they are not being left behind. And Elon Musk is certainly part of this as well, right? So he starts this company XAI because he wants to compete too. And one of the interesting details that people don't always realize is that OpenAI, which created ChatGPT, was founded back in 2015. And Elon Musk was actually one of the co-founders back then, along with Sam Altman. And it was later that he kind of left the organization because they had a disagreement on the path forward. And ultimately, the board chose to go with Sam Altman's path instead of Musk's path. And so as OpenAI was really kind of taking off, Elon Musk, did not want to see them kind of steal the limelight. He wanted his piece of it. And then, of course, the Grok chatbot ultimately comes out of XAI and is integrated into Twitter, or what we now call X, the social media platform.
Does Grok pose a bigger threat than, let's say, ChatGPT or any other AI tool, or even like photo editing software when it comes to creating really deep fakes?
Yeah, it's difficult, right? Because I think that there's a certain degree of risk with all of them. Creating deepfakes is not something new. As you said, we've had image editing software for a long time. It was just in the past, it took more work to do this, right? And it didn't necessarily look as good. It was easier to tell that it was a fake and those sorts of things. Or if you wanted it to look like it was real, then there was a lot more time that needed to go into actually making it look authentic, right? Now with these chatbots and these image generators, it's a lot easier to make something look realistic in a way that it wouldn't have in the past because of the way that these technologies work. And so the thing with the Grok chatbot and the image generator associated with it is that Elon Musk is kind of like specifically tried to position this as the anti-woke kind of generative AI play, right? It was not going to be compromised by quote unquote woke values. And so it has tried to remove a lot of the safeguards that some other companies have put on their, AI tools. I saw recently, I believe it was a journalist, I can't remember if it was from the New York Times or Wired, kind of like experimented with ChatGPT and with Grok to see if she could get them to produce, these, kind of undressing images of her, and found that ChatGPT kept stopping her when she tried to do it, but Grok would keep letting her kind of make these photos, right? And obviously she was testing it on herself because, that's, I guess, the most ethical way to try to do it. But it shows that, Grok has taken these restrictions away. And there was reporting in CNN that explicitly said that there was a meeting recently at the end of last year where Elon Musk, asked for these restrictions to be removed because he wanted more people to be engaging with it, to be using it. And maybe the one other point that I would add there is that if you're using like a ChatGPT or, say a Microsoft Copilot or something like that, it might have these restrictions in place to try to make sure that you're not going to be able to generate these really terrible things. But there are a bunch of kind of like open source AI models that anyone can take and kind of do whatever they want with. And it's very easy to use those to start churning out really bad images. And, for example, the Grok chatbot, there's the version that is on the Twitter or X platform, but then there's another version that's available through other means where you can produce far worse things than what is even available through the social media platform.
So, what would even be the point? And I guess I'm asking you this as a self-described muscologist. What would be the point of allowing, so much freedom that it's actually creating harm to other people?
Well, I guess the point is try to get to try to get people to use it, right? And also to try to get people to pay for it. And so what you have right now is, the Grok chatbot, as we have been talking about, these deep fakes, these explicit images that people have been generating with it of women, I'm sure of men as well, but also of children, which is, a whole other can of worms. But basically what we're seeing there is it was initially something that was rolled out with kind of like anybody who was using the platform could access it for free. In response to backlash, Elon Musk has pivoted to making it something that's only available for paying users. So, it's like sort of an acknowledgement that it was bad, but also like, if you pay us, you can still do the bad thing, that all of these governments are now coming after us and critics are coming after us for. But if you think about, there will be a certain subset of users that will be very, kind of willing and will really want to use these types of tools. We talk a lot about, say, in the past number of years, kind of like the incel communities and, kind of different right-wing groups that, are quite misogynistic and, don't believe in women's rights and things like this. See women only as kind of things that they should own and control and those sorts of things. And you have a lot of people, I think, who are interested in what Elon Musk is saying, who love the idea of just being able to use these tools to victimize people in the way that they have been regularly doing since it has been made so easily available for them to use. And there were some stats that I saw just last week that showed that since these restrictions had been removed from the Grok chatbot, engagement has increased. There has been a notable uptick in usership, right?
And a lot of that could just be people exploring now that they've heard about it and it's been in the media and they want to check out to see what's happening, right? But
Yeah.
why do you think, or what do you think this says about the type of platform that Musk wants X to become, only limiting it to paying users? What does that say about what he wants X to become?
Yeah, it's I think it's a really bad sign, right? But I think it's like one bad sign that has come after a long string of bad signs, really. At this point, since Elon Musk has taken over the platform, he has started to really become very explicit about the types of politics that he holds, which we know are very far to the right. Many would describe as white nationalists. He frequently makes these tweets, kind of echoing kind of the worst viewpoints that, kind of exist in our politics, right? And of course we saw that image of him doing, the salute, the fascist salute at the rally last year, at the beginning of last year. And people questioned that at that time, does he really hold these politics? But over the past year, I think he has made that quite clear with the continued statements that he makes. And so there's that aspect of kind of how he has shifted the platform platform, how he has tried to make the platform, push these kinds of political viewpoints and to amplify them more in the algorithmic feed that people see. But then there's also the piece of this where, Elon Musk has a certain, how would you even put it? Like a certain sexual politics, I guess. He is someone who believes he needs to have a load of kids to kind of populate the world with, his kind of DNA and things like this, because he believes that he is a great and exceptional man. And so he needs more of that around. There are a lot of people around him who believe these sorts of things as well. And so we know that he has like more than 10, I've lost count of the number. He has more than 10 kids, and I'm sure there's more that we don't know about, right? But he has also seemingly made it quite clear that, he has talked in the past about how he's potentially against abortion. He's against birth control. I think it's clear to say that he sees a lot of women as, kind of reproductive units, right? For this kind of idea of a world that he has. And if you look more recently in the past year about the types of things that he has been talking about, he also seems, I don't know, maybe sexually frustrated, if you want to put it that way. He has, been rolling out features on through Grok for people to be able to kind of use it as their girlfriends, to put a not safe for work mode in there, where you can kind of take the clothes off of the AI avatar and things like that. And has also posted a lot of things, generating images of women and making comments about those images that are, I would say, if a regular person did it, we would be saying there's something wrong here, right? And so to me, then seeing him kind of take these restrictions off and then also kind of make some joking comments as the criticism has escalated of the ability of Grok to, or users to use Grok to take the clothes off of people, that he doesn't really see this as much of a problem, and seems to be rather entertained by what's going on.
Well, this really isn't the first time that Grok's gotten into problems like this, right? We said in the summer, yeah, that Grok's chat boxes were coming up with anti-Semitic rhetoric, that they were actually praising Hitler at one point. I mean, is this a sign that Grok needs to be, and we've seen this more with Grok than with any other AI tool, is this something that could be easily reined in by Elon Musk or the people at XAI?
Oh, it definitely can. Yeah. When we're kind of seeing those outbursts, right? So when Grok starts to make a lot of anti-Semitic statements in a short period of time, there was a period where it was talking a ton about white genocide in South Africa, which is like a far-right conspiracy theory. Obviously the moment you talked about when it was praising Hitler a lot and even calling itself Mecha Hitler. And there was a moment as well where you could ask it anything about Elon Musk, and it would always say that Elon Musk was the best of the world at anything, even when that meant he was the best in the world at drinking pee. He was still the best, no matter what you proposed to the chatbot, right? And these are the result of kind of tweaks that are made internally behind the scenes, that kind of guide what this chatbot is doing, right? It's not thinking for itself or anything like this. There are weights behind the scenes that the people behind it are kind of shifting in order to allow certain outputs or to enable certain outputs. And so, as I was talking about before, there was this meeting at the end of 2025 that CNN has reported on, where Elon Musk was like explicitly saying we need to take off some of these restrictions so that people can generate the types of images that are causing a lot of controversy at the moment. And there were actually a couple people from the trust and safety team, the very small trust and safety team that remains at X now, that actually resigned, in the aftermath of that meeting, right? So we know that people were not okay with this happening. And we know that they can easily take action to pull this back, to rein this in again, to stop allowing users to generate these types of images. But it seems quite clear that they don't have very much interest in doing so. And the only action that they have taken has been in response of pressure from governments as, kind of investigations and things have been escalating. But again, it hasn't really been to disable the feature, and more to say, hey, if you like undressing people and victimizing them in this way, then just pay us a bit of money and you can keep doing it.
Well, and I think it's interesting because you talked about how some governmental pressure has resulted in some of those earlier changes. And we're probably going to see more of that because several governments, especially in Europe, have now said that they're going to be investigating the situation. We know that Malaysia and Indonesia have actually banned the use of Grok, at least on a temporary basis. But Canada's Minister of AI, Elon Musk, excuse me,
Close enough.
Evan Solomon has said very clearly that, Canada is not going to ban X. And he hasn't really alluded to if there's a potential to ban Grok. But is there something that the Canadian government can do to better protect Canadians in this area?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it, right? Ultimately, we are a sovereign country, and we can control what happens in our borders, even if we do have very influential, very powerful people who don't want us to do that. And when I say that, I mean the tech billionaires of Silicon Valley who control these things, right? And so I was actually really disappointed to see the minister's statement, if I'm being quite honest, because he made an earlier statement saying that deepfake sexual abuse is clearly a problem and that the government does want to address it. But we know that the reason that we're talking about this right now is because of everything that is being enabled by Grok and by the X platform and by Elon Musk. And then to immediately come out and say, but we're not looking to do anything about the platform that's enabling all of this right now, I think is really a problem. And I hope is going to be indefensible as this continues to move forward. There was reporting, there was an estimate done in the United States of the number of people who, or the number of these types of images that were being produced, and it found it was something like 6,700, kind of undressing images every hour that were being made. And so you think about the number of people over just one day who are now being affected by this, and then you escalate that over the fact that this has been over 2 weeks now, and this is continuing to go on. And surely, as there's more attention, I would not be surprised if more people are trying it out or doing it more. And you start to see that, and again, this is just one platform, right? There are a number of other places where people can do these types of things as well. And so at what point, this is not the first time that we've been talking about it. People might remember back in 2024, I believe it was, there was another controversy where people were creating deepfakes of Taylor Swift, specifically, that kind of pushed it into the public conversation. And there was some kind of legislative action, some government attention at that time, but it doesn't seem to have really made kind of like the concerted difference that we would need to see. And so now at this moment, it's like, look, as you said, we have Indonesia and Malaysia that have moved forward. India has been talking about potentially doing this as well. We have seen Brazil in the past do a block of the X social media platform because it was not abiding by a Supreme Court ruling. And of course, we are seeing more and more talk in Europe and in particular in the UK about taking action against X and the Grok chatbot in response to what is happening. And I think it's a bit sad that Canada has put itself on the sidelines, because the tweet from Evan Solomon saying that we were not considering a ban of X came directly in response to media reporting in the UK that said that the UK government had started talking to Canada and Australia about kind of putting together a common front to tackle this together. And Canada seems to have very quickly rebutted that and said we're not part of this, which I think is unfortunate.
I think it's really interesting, and it's something that you just touched on there, is that Minister Solomon actually used X to share his statements, and he used it again, though. And I just called it up on my computer here so I can read it verbatim to you. But he did issue a statement saying deepfake sexual abuse is violence. And then he goes on to say that our government is continuing to advance responsible AI, including introducing Bill C-16, the Protecting Victims Act, to amend the criminal code to include deepfakes as intimate images for the offense of publication of an intimate image without consent. Now, is that going to be enough to really just say you have to have consent in order to be putting out sexualized images, deepfake images of people? Because a lot of legal experts are saying this isn't enough. And if this is the biggest stick that the Canadian government is bringing to the table, is that going to be enough to protect Canadians?
Yeah, listen, I wouldn't say we shouldn't do it, but, I think that there's a lot more to be done. And as I was saying, how long is it going to take to get this piece of legislation into law moving forward so it can actually be actioned when people are being harmed right now, right? And have been being harmed for a while. And this harm has escalated in this moment. And so to say oh, we think this is a problem and we're going to do something, but doing something is going to take ages, then more and more Canadians are, and people beyond Canada as well, but, in our context as Canadians are are being affected, are being victimized from this platform and from what it is enabling its users to do. And I think it is like on the government to actually be serious about acting on this. And I think that this kind of maybe gets to a broader issue with the tech policy that we've been seeing from this government, where unfortunately they have rolled back kind of a number of things that the previous government was moving forward. We saw, of course, the digital services tax be rolled back, which was trying to get further revenue from these large U.S. tech companies that don't pay enough tax revenue in Canada. The online harms bill or act, I can't remember exactly the name of it, but that was supposed to be moving forward to start to try to address some of these things. Of course, chatbots were not part of that at the time, but to give the government more tools to try to address some of the harms that we see online. And so far, that has been kind of put on hold by the Carney government. There has been talk of it coming back at some point this year, but in a different form, and we haven't seen what that is yet. And of course, the AI regulations were also put on pause, and we don't know what a new version of that is going to look like yet. So, a lot of this stuff has been in deep freeze as the problems have continued to escalate, and we haven't really seen much evidence from the government of what they're actually going to do to try to address this. They talk a lot about rolling out AI, about embracing AI, about the potential productivity benefits of AI, and all these sorts of things, but they don't seem to want to address, the ways that AI is also harming Canadians, and how we need to rein that in if we want to do this ethically, if that's possible, right?
Is there a specific step or tool that you would use if you were the Minister of AI to address this concern?
I think it's difficult, right? And I think we need to look at kind of the tools that are in our toolbox at the moment, because there has already been commentary since this happened that Canada is potentially lacking tools that some other jurisdictions have, right? If you look down at Australia, for example, they have an e-safety commissioner that is regularly looking at the platforms, at the digital tech sector, at, the kind of ways that they are affecting society and the ways that they should maybe have to change their practices in order to rein things in. Good countries in Europe have bills that give the government much more authority over what is happening on these platforms. Again, in order to try to protect the public, in order to try to make sure that there's a balance between, things like free speech or, our ability to do what we want online, but also making sure that people aren't being harmed as we're seeing right now. I think Canada has generally been not a leader on tech regulation and thinking about the harms of these technologies and trying to address them. And I think that is really coming to the fore in this moment, where we're seeing so many other jurisdictions, and often jurisdictions that we associate ourselves with and that we think that we have a lot in common with, if we think about Europe and Australia, for example, really move forward on this, while our regulators and our government is saying, we think this is a problem, but don't expect us to do very much about it. And I really don't think that reaches where Canadians are expecting them to be right now.
So right now, the Canadian government isn't doing enough to protect Canadians. Is that I'm getting that from you, right?
Absolutely not.
What can Canadians do to better protect themselves from being a victim of deepfakes, having their children be victims of deepfakes? But also, I think that even as just a user, a social media user, and being confronted with this, are there steps that Canadians can take to better protect themselves from being a victim of these actions?
I wish I could say that there was like an easy fix, and if you did this one thing, it would make sure that you wouldn't be affected. But the truth is that the only way to not be a victim of this at the moment is, I guess, one, to not be very visible online, and that also means to really not be posting very much online, and certainly not photos, right? There has been a discussion for a long time about whether people should be posting photos of kids online, and of course, I think the use of these tools to actually undress children and make child sexual abuse material, really raises that even further, right? Like, kind of brings that to the fore. And I don't know if we should be posting pictures of kids online at all, which is maybe unfortunate in some ways, maybe good in other ways. But unfortunately for regular people, for women in particular, trying to engage in this world, there are certain people whose jobs kind of requires them to be very public and to have their image out there and things like that. While these companies are able to do whatever they want, while there's no real safeguards on these tools, there's almost nothing to do other than not posting your photo and not trying to garner the attention of the people who would be trying to use these tools against you, which is why, certainly we can take that individual action, but why I think it's so important that the government is actually acting to protect people here, because it's so hard as an individual to actually opt out of potentially being the victim of something like this.
Thank you so much, Paris, for this conversation. And, I was kind of hoping that you'd have some real fantastic way that we could all protect ourselves. But yeah, I think that you're probably hitting the nail right on the head, that this really is something that as a consumer and as a user of social media, you really are ultimately powerless from.
Yeah, I wish I could say that there was like a setting you could change or something that made it so that your images couldn't be used by this. But unfortunately, if you look on the X platform specifically, people could just respond to a tweet or an image that you posted and say, undress this person. But even beyond that, they can go grab pictures from anywhere and put them into these tools and do the same thing. So unfortunately, that option doesn't exist. But yeah, I certainly appreciate the conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much, Paris. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And that was The Big Story. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation. Send us an email at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. Reach us on Instagram @frequencypods or on Blue Sky @thebigstory. Now, if you know someone that might enjoy this episode, be sure to send it to them. And you can listen to The Big Story every day on the Seeker app or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Cristina Howorun. Thanks for listening.